Hi everyone, it's Wednesday, April 15th. We are halfway into April, and for many, about a month into this COVID-19 crisis impacting our lives in a meaningful way. Welcome to today's talk with Dr. JP Pawliw-Fry on managing pressure during the COVID-19 crisis. I attended a similar webinar that he led about a month ago, and I wanted to share the information with the council's community given the state of the world and this new normal we're living in. We're all under a lot of pressure in our roles as individuals, professionals, parents, friends, and family members. And I'm sure it could all stand to have a few more tools in our toolbox to help us manage that. So I'd like to introduce to you Dr. JP Pawliw-Fry from the Institute of Health and Human Potential. JP is a New York Times bestselling author of Performing Under Pressure, and as a performance coach to both NHL and NBA athletes, among many other professionals, and an expert on emotional intelligence. A few housekeeping notes. I want to remind everyone that you can submit questions at any time throughout the talk using the Q&A tab, which you should see at the bottom of your Zoom window. Some we might sneak in mid-talk, but we've also reserved time at the end for questions. We may promote you to panelist to ask your questions, so be prepared to turn on your video and unmute yourself. Now, without using any more of the oxygen, Dr. JP, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, sounds great. Great to be here. Thank you so much, Brittany. Thank you, Charlie, for all of the work to make this happen. Really excited to be here. The challenge is, can we be the calm person in the boat? And that story comes from in the 70s and into the 80s even, there was a group of folks who left Vietnam. We knew them as the Vietnamese boat people, and they left on rickety boats to try to find a better life. And they faced storms and mutiny on the boats. And there's a lot of people who got sick and a lot of people who died. And then there were some boats where fewer people got sick, nobody died. And when researchers did some qualitative interviews with both kind of sets of boats, they found that the group that had lower morbidity and lower mortality had at least one person who was the calm person in the boat. And that person, because emotions are infectious, infected everyone with that calm. And so people collaborated more effectively together. People were able to kind of manage the storms, and there were mighty storms. And I think it's an appropriate metaphor or analog, at least for today. And I want to challenge, can we be the calm person in the boat? Because this is a very, very difficult time, and it's just true. And so what I want to give you today are some strategies, some insights. At the Institute for Health and Human Potential, we survey over 40,000 people a month. And so I want to give you, what have we learned surveying that many people for the last 20 years, so that you can walk away with something that, really helps. So, what we're going to talk about today are really, number one, what are last 8% moments? And why do they matter? What gets in the way of being effective in last 8% moments? And what can we do to manage it more effectively, which is emotional intelligence? And then what are some specific tools? I want to leave you with specific tools and resources for you to be able to learn some of these tools. So we all have an aspiration. You do, I do, right? We want to, survive first and foremost. And, COVID-19, coronavirus, whatever we're calling it, does put us in a place where we are rightfully worried about our, security, our safety, our survival. We also want to adapt. Within our organizations, we need to adapt. And for some, it's to kind of shut down, get a lot skinnier in order to survive. For others, it's, it's overwhelming with some of the work you're now needing to do and how you need to scale up in order to meet that demand. The bottom line, though, is that in organizations, we want to try and survive. We want to adapt. Us as individuals, we want to be an exceptional leader, right? We want to show up at our best. We want to be an effective coach and really coach people through. And by the way, it's not just at work. Of course, this is such an unprecedented time. We're now in our homes. We're now with our families and in different circumstances. And we don't get the break that we normally do. So it's not just being a coach at work. We want to be a good decision maker, right? Think about the decisions we're facing, letting people go. How do we adapt? Engaging people. How do we move people from despair to hope? There's a whole bunch of decisions we need to make and to influence our organization so that we can all step up and be our best. And we would need to be a great listener in order to do that. What's interesting is that when we're under pressure, one of the first thing that goes is our ability to listen. So I want you to look out for that. And finally, we want to be a great partner and parent. So imagine there's like a story, a drama that we're in. When I say drama, I don't mean that in a kind of a pejorative way, but there's a story, a drama that we're going through. We're good people wanting to do great things during this difficult time, but we're facing a really challenging time, right? Something that gets in the way. And that's something that gets in the way is what we call last 8%. So what is last 8%? Well, originally in our research, it came from noticing, I was working with a CEO and their 2IC, their second in command, large multinational organization, one that we're all fairly familiar with. And so I'm working with the senior team and the CEO and their second in command, and they weren't getting along. So I was coaching each of them, and then I mediated a conversation with the two of them. And it was very interesting because we finished the conversation, and then I went back to have, separate coaching calls. And I asked each of them, how'd it go? Oh, great. Did you say everything you wanted to say? And both of them said, yeah, absolutely. I said, everything? And they said, well, maybe not everything. Okay, what didn't you say? What percentage did you not say? And this was the start. This was about 7 or 8 years ago. And what we're finding both in that first experience, but then, looking at thousands of people, is that we walk into a conversation, a more difficult conversation, and many of us get to 92% of what we want to say. But when we get to that last 8%, that more difficult part of the conversation, as opposed to approaching it and having that last 8%, many of us sense the emotion that's happening for the other person. We get infected by their emotion. And now, as opposed to approaching that last 8%, we avoid it. And here's the problem. That person can't read our mind. They don't know we didn't have the full conversation. So we leave the conversation thinking, actually, this is very interesting in our data, that we had most of the, we did talk about most of the things we wanted to talk about, conveniently leaving out that last 8%. So we think we had it. They think we had it. They can't read our mind. Problem is, we never had the last 8% conversation. George Bernard Shaw said, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. It never took place. So I want to challenge you on this, because what gets in the way of us adapting, surviving, being the best leader we can be is this last 8%. And it started in our data around conversation, but now we're seeing it with decisions. We're seeing that we have to make tough decisions right now around who do we keep? How do we adapt? And if we're not having the tough conversations or making the tough decisions, then we're in trouble. We're not going to be as effective as we can be. And in some ways, I would say COVID-19 or coronavirus is really in its entirety a last 8% situation. That is a situation that's harder than the usual ones we face in the course of a day, a week, a month, or in coronavirus's case, maybe a lifetime. So this is the villain in our story, right? This is the dragon we need to slay. This is the monster under our bed. And if you're sitting there going, yeah, that resonates, I'm maybe not having the full conversation, you're not alone. If you're sitting there and you're paralyzed a bit on some decisions, you're not alone. I'm telling you, like we work with some of the top organizations in the world, and this is a common experience. And that you see the challenge is that there are consequences, right? So first of all, we have one of two predictable default behaviors. So, and this is really the self-awareness part that I want you to kind of pay attention to. What are you? When you face a last 8% situation, do you avoid? I've described that, right? Do you avoid, or do you what we call make a mess, right? Do you let emotions get in the way and now you're way too strong, or you're not listening and you're impacting people in ways you don't intend? Now, as you can tell, I'm not here to motivate you. I'm here to open all of our eyes to the truth. I want to challenge you to become a student of human behavior. And the best news is that there's something we can do, because if we don't, if we fall into this predictable default behavior of avoid or make a mess, then we fall, and we have really two consequences. The first is to our external reputation. People look at us and they think, they see us avoiding, or they see us making a mess, not bringing our team along with us. And they think, I don't know if I can trust them with this mission critical project. So there's an external hit. It affects our reputation, our status. And we know that directly impacts promotion and a whole bunch of other things. But to be honest, I think it's this consequence which is even more significant, to our internal reputation, where we realize we didn't do as well as we could have. We knew we took an off-ramp and avoided. We knew that we got overwhelmed and took it out on people, and we're too abrupt, and we weren't listening, and we made a mess. And so we end up feeling it harms how we look at ourselves, and we feel shame and regret. And then it diminishes our confidence. And then the next time when we are facing the same last 8%, or it doesn't even matter if it's the same, but a last 8% situation, we're even more prone to fall into our default behaviors. And I don't want that to happen to you. In fact, I'll tell you this, something that gets me up every day is the fact that I don't want people to walk around with this residue of shame or regret. That is no way to live our life. Honestly, I've been to 6 Olympic Games. The worst thing you can do is leave an Olympic Games with this feeling like you didn't take your shots, this feeling of regret. And the Olympic Games goes like that. It's over before you know it. And I don't want the same thing to happen to you. And I think our life is an analog to an Olympic Games. It happens way quicker than we think, and we don't want to waste moments. Okay, so to start, I'd like in the chat, I would like you to share a last 8% moment that you're facing. It could be a decision, it could be a conversation, it could be a situation. So go to the chat and just punch in whatever, hits you as, yeah, you know what, this is for me a last 8% moment. Do that now if you would. Thank you, Brittany and Charlie, for putting that up. So hopefully you can see the chat on our Zoom. And
you might just need to pop that up by hitting the chat.
Got it.
Tab down at the bottom.
Great, thank you. So as we're waiting to look, I can see having a conversation with my boss where I'm feeling at risk. Having a conversation about finances with my partner because of changes in my income. Yeah, our kids who are in a place where they're not at school, and no prom, no captaining the golf team in their senior year, and then us trying to manage and coach them through their anxiety, where there is tension. Yeah. Moving big life events like a wedding. So I'll tell you a really quick story. We're doing a virtual keynote for an organization, and one of the people who I'm organizing it with, 3 weeks ago, his mom was on a respirator. 3 days ago, he told me she died. And 4 days before she died, they actually had a virtual wedding of his son in the same thing, because they just wanted to get it in before she passed, which is just heartbreaking. Counseling an employee to let work go, that her job was safe. Yeah, that's a great one. So there's a lot of different situations that we're facing. And I want to, just for time's sake, I want to kind of continue to move on. So here's where we're at. We're good people wanting to do the best we can. We faced a villain, which is last 8%. And there are consequences. And so we need to transform ourselves. We need a plan to help us get us through this. And so here's what that plan is. And here's the work that we've been doing for 20 years. How do we reach that aspiration of adapting, surviving, being an exceptional leader? How do we skillfully approach this villain, this last 8%? Well, here's what we know. It's not about how smart we are. It's not about how technically skilled we are. Those are what we call threshold capabilities, entrance criteria. They don't make the big difference to helping us adapt, survive, and be an exceptional leader. They don't, or coach our kids. They're kind of table stakes. You need a certain amount, right? But once you cross that line, that threshold, let's talk about IQ, any more doesn't give you a big advantage. Warren Buffett says it better than I. If you've got an IQ of 150, take 30, sell it, get some value for it, as only Warren Buffett can. No, the difference, the excellence criteria is emotional intelligence. How are you managing those strong emotions that can cause you to avoid? How are you managing those strong emotions like anger that can cause you to make a mess? How are you managing the strong emotions of others? Your daughter who's not going to the prom and is really sad about that. How can we have empathy and tune in? Or for somebody who's worried about their job and we need to kind of coach them in a way so it'll calm them down and they can do their best work. Rule of thumb is that this one circle of emotional intelligence counts for twice as much as the other two circles combined in determining how effective that we will be. And so while IQ at age 16 is pretty concrete, my son turned 17 the other day. I had to break it to him. Wes, you're done. No more IQ for you. He wasn't too happy. But the good news is that for him, for all of us, if we are aggressive learners, we can grow our emotional intelligence. Let me tell you one of my favorite stats of all of our data. High performers are imperfect. They make mistakes just like you and I, but they extract 3 to 5 times more information from the same opportunity to learn as an average performer. Think about that. Like, that's incredible, right? So we need to be aggressive learners. Okay, World Economic Forum said EI top 10 skill this year. McKinsey says EI will outpace cognitive by 2030. Why? Because we can't AI away EI, right? Emotions are not something right now we're capable of understanding, replicating in a machine. In fact, I don't think we ever will. I might be wrong. And so it's emotions that is a differentiator. And then finally, Harvard Business Review has said, the challenge is that only 18% of organizations have EI ingrained into their cultures. I've certainly seen that in the kind of consulting and work that we do. So we're going to go to a poll to start. My organization operates with agility during times of challenge and crisis. So please go to the poll. And I'd like you to answer. My organization operates with agility during this time, we could say. All right, let's get it back. What do we have for numbers?
We've got 14 to 16.
Okay. Yeah, I have to say this actually fits with some of our recent data. So if we asked you this 6 weeks and 1 day ago, we would have had almost the same kind of 57 and 30, almost 86%, not in the top 2 boxes, but in the bottom, maybe not the bottom 2 boxes, but certainly either neither agree or disagree, and then disagree and strongly disagree. And what's interesting in our data, we found this, and this fits, that people are coming together, right? When we face that monster and we realize, oh my gosh, this is really big, we actually tend to work well together, trying to be helpful to others. What's interesting, and I want you to watch out for this in your organization, when you get back, when we get this new normal, and there's less the big monster under the bed, how are we collaborating still? How agile are we being? So that's very interesting. Thank you very much for answering that. So we need a plan, right? So what's the plan for us to deal with this last 8% more skillfully, so we can feel better about ourselves, but so we can have the impact we want to have? It's all about managing our emotions, and it starts with self-awareness, right? It's understanding what is our predictable default behavior. Do we avoid? Do we make a mess? Then we need a specific strategy, right? And there's different strategies, whether you avoid or whether you make a mess. So that's emotional management. And I said this earlier, if we're not able to be self-aware, emotionally managed, there's no way that we're going to be able to connect and listen to others. And then finally, all of this is about personal leadership. Can we take risks, get out of the harbor? I think I worked, maybe you know this from my bio, but I worked with NBA, NFL teams, and Adam Silver at the NBA, he took a risk, right? He got out of the, I'll make that reference in a minute about getting out of the harbor, but Adam Silver took a risk when he got a little bit of information and immediately canceled the NBA season. He was ahead of everyone. To me, that's real leadership, when you take those smart risks. And look, it might have worked out against him, but real leadership is when you don't have the protection of others. And one of my favorite saying that I learned working at the Navy is this: ships are safe in the harbor, but that's not what ships are for, right? Our lives, especially as leaders, are not meant to be lived in the harbor where it's safe. Our lives are meant to be lived outside the harbor where, yes, there's more risk, but there's also more reward. That's what Adam Silver did. And so are you being that kind of leader that manages your emotions and then is able to act decisively? So let's understand a little bit more about, we'll do what we can in our time. This is part of a longer, course that, but I want to give you some snippets. And I also want to give you an opportunity to see how you can learn more about this. But let's start with self-awareness. So let's think about the brain, right? There's a part of the brain called the amygdala. That's the emotional part of our brain. And it allows us to learn for the first time. You won't forget where you were during 9/11. Those images will stay with you forever. But this amygdala, not only is it that place that allows us to learn, it's our source of emotional memory, but it also answers that one critical question of human survival. Do you know what that is? Do I eat it, or does it eat me? And so that's the emotional part of our brain. Now there's a higher center, the IQ part of our brain, prefrontal cortex, and this is our site of working memory. And I want to bring up this idea of markers. So you can see in front of me, right? I've got markers. I've got 4 markers. We actually know that our working memory is 6 or 7 bytes of information, but it's plus or minus 1 or 2. So what we say is that we can at least hold on to 4 ideas at any one time, okay? So imagine you have 4 ideas and you can hold these up in your brain. Like there's a space above the eyes behind the forehead. So we go through our day, our busy day. We got Zoom on, we've got kids who are homeschooling, we've got, maybe our partner's out of work or very anxious. And so we're managing many different parts. Here's how thinking works. I'm on a Zoom meeting and, I hear someone, that's one idea that goes in my head. I think of something else pulling from long-term memory. That's 2, right? Then somebody says something that I disagree with, and it has a technical part, and so that's almost 3. So I've got 3 markers that are being used. And then number 4, I've got a memory about a similar situation that happened a month ago. The idea is that we have 4 markers that we're holding up in our brain, and thinking is when we move them around so that we can respond in the most accurate, precise way. Now, if I have 4 chunks, 4 ideas, moving them around so I can come up with the best response, what's the maximum number of combinations I have in my hand when I have 4? So this is a math question. Think to yourself, if you have 4 and you can move them around, what's the maximum number of combinations you have in your repertoire of response? And that number is 24. 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So in a sense, when I have all of my markers, I can sit here, I can listen better, I can think from my customer's point of view, I can think from other teammates as I'm collaborating point of view, And I can respond in the most kind of accurate, precise way so that they can hear me. Okay, so here's the question. When we are facing a really big challenge, such as a last 8% conversation, a last 8% decision, what part of our brain do you think feels this first? What part of our brain processes this first? It's our amygdala. We feel before we think. Whether you like it or not, that's just the way you're designed. That's the way I'm designed. And if we don't have skills to manage our emotions, how we feel, what's going on in the amygdala part of our brain, we're in trouble, right? And so we're not able to think straight. We lose complex thought. We have what's known as an amygdala hijack, where the amygdala hijacks our higher centers, floods working memory, and cortisol is the mediating chemical. It lasts for 18 minutes. For 18 minutes, we're not as smart as we normally are. Think about that around decision making. Think about that. If we are not at our best, if we're hijacked, if we have cortisol in our system, we're dropping markers. And let me go back to that. Let me describe this. Literally, this is what's going on in the brain. So I'm in a meeting. Somebody almost puts me down, shuts me down, lets me down, and I literally drop a marker. So did I just lose 25% of the possible responses, or did I lose more? I lost more. Now I'm down to 3 times 2 times 1. I lost 75% more. So now we can't think straight, right? We're not at our best. All right. If we continue on, we might drop another marker because now it's getting personal. And all of a sudden we're in black or white, right or wrong, binary thinking. All of a sudden we're clearly going to be in a situation where, from my brain's perspective, in this conversation, let's say, who's going to be 100% right and who's going to be 100% wrong? Well, I'm going to be 100% right. What impact am I now having on someone else? Am I now making a mess? Or do I get really overwhelmed and do I avoid and I become smaller in my situation? So the bottom line is there are 3 hallmarks, right? There's 2 hallmarks. We either avoid and make a mess, or we have a negativity bias, right? We amplify the negative. And then finally, we infect others, right? Those are the hallmarks. So we either avoid or make a mess, but we can start to, with our negativity bias, infect others. All right, so here's what I'd like you to do right now. I'd like you to go into the chat. What I'd like you to do is answer this question. What does it look like when someone drops markers? What do you actually see? So I want you to think about, you're on a team and someone's dropping markers. What do you see? Yeah, for sure. You see a change in facial expression. You see a sharper tone. Maybe they go quiet. Maybe they go loud. There's tension. You can feel the tension, right? Emotions are infectious. You can feel that tension. People shut down. You can see it in their body language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people get distracted. Brittany, what are some of the things that you've seen?
Well, we're all human, right? So, in our smaller team, we're all remote. And so we're very well schooled at, remote work and seeing each other's body language. And for myself, I have a tendency to get real quiet. And afterwards, my team will reach out and go, hey, you weren't speaking up a whole lot on that call. What's going on?
No, that's exactly it. And what it is, and you've actually hit on something, what it is, it's almost like that. When we see behavior that's out of character, that's not Brittany, or out of proportion, that's not Brittany. That's what you want to look for. Okay, so when you think of what do you look for, those are some of the things. Now, I want to push it at all of us, right? When we think of self-awareness, what does it feel like? So, Brittany, I'll say mine and then you can say yours. And we're looking for is a big 3, right? So what do I mean by that? The signs that you're dropping markers. We get so cognitively involved in the story, we don't even know we're going down that pathway of dropping markers, of not being able to think. And so we feel it in our body first. So for me, I feel heat right here. Some of my athletes feel butterflies, some feel shoulder, chest, some in the throat. That's not me. I feel heat. So that's one of my big three. The other two is that I get really certain that I'm right and they're wrong. Makes sense. I'm dropping markers. I lose, the ability to see other options. And number three, I get a real sense of urgency. I got to answer this email right now. I got to say this right now. So my big three are heat, certainty, urgency. Brittany, how about you?
I definitely feel heat, but it's more, I guess, mid-range.
Yeah.
And when it's really intense, it's the whole body.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll even get the tremors, the shakes, or just like this physical reaction to it that goes beyond heat. And what's the third? Probably inability to focus on anything but that thing.
Yeah.
Like just intense, like can't let it go.
We get really narrow focused. I'm seeing some other folks mention hands tightening up, teeth clench, chest tightens. Those are, absolutely. Inability, by the way, Lou was mentioning inability to get sentences out. Like we know what we need to say, but we, have trouble getting it out. Absolutely. These are all, feeling paralyzed, forgetting our words. Absolutely. This is what's going on. And so this is why I hope you're starting to see, right? We're good people wanting to do good things. We're faced with this really challenging villain, which is last 8%, COVID-19 or coronavirus, and then the conversations, decisions. And now we need a plan. And the plan is to manage our emotions, right? So what do we do when, to manage? And so there's two parts here. One is the insight. This is what's going on in your brain. Part of the tool is know your big three, right? Know your big three. Peter Drucker said, towards the end of his life, he said, I no longer think that learning how to manage people, especially subordinates, is the most important thing for an executive to learn. I am teaching above all else how to manage oneself. I love that line. I'm a big fan of Peter Drucker's. He's passed away now, but that's it. Like we cannot be effective unless we're managing ourselves, managing our emotions. Okay, so we need some emotional management strategies. I want to give you one that I think is just so powerful. So I think I've mentioned to everyone, we survey over 40,000 people a month. We're big into research. And so we look at what are some of the habits of some of the kind of high performers among us. Not just like athletes, but, folks at Goldman Sachs or, Federal Reserve Bank through the global financial crisis, or US Marines and all different groups and people like all of us on the line. Here's what we see a lot of us who are average do. And I don't want to be too negative when I say that, but here's what a lot of us can do. How do we start our day? So we find that a lot of people, and by the way, I do this too. So I'm including myself. I start with this. I literally get up. I'm not even up. I'm in my bed and I grab my phone and I look at my news feed and I check out the New York Times and I'm looking at, an email or text that came from overseas or something that came early in the morning. And look, that's not the end of the world, but I can tell you right now, it's not a habit of high performance. It's not. Why? It spikes our cortisol, stress hormone. You already know that this is not a good drug for us. Actually, incidentally, cortisol is highest in the morning because it helps us get up, but we don't need excessive cortisol. That's not good for us because that sets the tone for the day. We're already in a state of anxiety. Now we're starting to move around the house and we start to infect others with that. So don't do this, right? I've got a much better hack. What I'm going to suggest you do instead is get up and start a morning routine. Decide what it is for you. I quite frankly don't kind of care what it is, but it's got to fit for you. That's what we know, right? When I think of all the athletes and people that I work with, I coach coaches in the NBA and Olympic coaches. They have a very clear morning routine. So here's what I'm going to give you one, but find one that works for you. It doesn't have to be this one. Don't look at your phone. Get up 15 minutes earlier and do this. As I like to say, start your day like an Olympian. So here's one that you can do. Doesn't cost a cent, but it's a podcast, The Last 8% Morning. You can get this in any place you get your podcasts. It's a 15-minute audio routine that integrates three things: movement, mindfulness, and mental training exercises. What do I mean by that? You get up, you download, or you downloaded it from before. It comes out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you go for a walk, a 15-minute walk. You set the tone for your day. So you're walking, that's movement. I guide you, it's my voice, because this is my morning routine, quite frankly. So I'm literally taking you through my routine as I do it. And I guide you through some mindfulness. Some people have trouble sitting and doing mindfulness or meditation. So you walk. This is for me, this is a big breakthrough with a lot of different clients or athletes. They can move so much easier, and we can build mindfulness into our walking. But then we have some mental training exercises that include some of the things I'm talking about here, which is how do you manage your brain under pressure? And so this is, in my mind, this is a no-brainer. And so within this, there's a BIG structure, the acronym BIG, couple of B's, couple of I's, couple of G's. The first B is you make your bed. You'll learn why. The second is you're mindful of your belly and your body. That's the second B, belly and body kind of together. Then we either have one of two I's every day, an idea of the day, or we talk about our identity, strengthening our identity. Idea of the day is, like we talk about some of the ideas here, right? We need to learn as fast as the world is changing. And then we have two G's. And again, we pick one for the day, gratitude or goals. But the idea is in 15 minutes, we've moved, we've been a bit more mindful, and we can start the day a little bit more clear. We can set the tone. So this to me is like a no-brainer, and it's free. So it's kind of a no-brainer. I would definitely do that. Here's another thing that you can do. Attend our live online EI training. Now, we normally charge several $100s for this, but we've decided because of coronavirus, we're making our offerings free, literally. And so how do I get this to you? You can link in with me. I'll show you how you can link in with me, and then I'll send you a passcode. And they're filling up very fast, but I'll tell you a little bit more about this, right? It's a 2-hour Zoom sessions with a live facilitator and a cohort of 20 to 30 people, highly interactive. It's our flagship program. And to me, it's kind of like, why wouldn't you take this if you can? This is what we spent 20 years developing. So, again, it's filling up quick, but we're putting on as many courses as we can, no cost to you. And we'll definitely do it for April and May, probably June as well. So we can, if you actually, I'll send you a way to get connected with me on LinkedIn, and then we can, you can connect with me. So what are the takeaways from today? Your last 8% moments are critical, right? Those are it's those moments that people remember. It's those moments when we're really challenged to be at our best, when we can have the maximum impact. Managing emotions is the key. That's what gets in our way. That's what causes us to fall into avoid or make a mess. And then finally, we need to be this aggressive learner, right? I don't know if I shared already on here, but we extract, the high performers extract, I did 3 to 5 times more information from the same opportunity to learn. So why don't we stop there, Brittany? And let me just go to, so here's some of the resources, right? Last 8% morning. You can join our Facebook group. There's a ton of resources there, the live online training. And let me just go to this. And then why don't we go to questions? Because I think we're doing pretty good for time.
Yeah. And also, I'll note too, I will be sending an email out to all the attendees.
Great.
So we can send links to everything that you had.
Yeah, that's great. And so, by the way, this Facebook group, please join it, right? Get engaged. You can get the last 8% morning there. You can sign up for the course. And this is, we're not going to do this forever. We're going to do this while there's this really critical time where I think people really need to manage their emotions. But, so link in and we can kind of really create some real, working together so we can, deal with this really challenging time. So questions, Brittany?
Yeah, actually, I have one I'll lead off with as folks are pondering. One is, in that moment that, for me, of course, feeling the heat, that tremor, noticing is only half the battle. So what would be your recommendation on ways to just quickly, snap out or notice? And I'm sure it takes practice, right? Noticing the heat, the tension. Okay,
Yep.
there, now what?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So I literally, I'll tell you kind of an abbreviated, but in the last 8% morning, I have the actual SOS tool. So the SOS tool, which I'll describe now, you actually get 7 minutes in a 15-minute idea of the day if you go on to the podcast where it describes in more detail. But that's a great question, which is, okay, I'm feeling right now heat for me, chest for more globalized heat for you. What do? We go to SOS. Right? We stop. The first S is stop. We co-developed this with the US Navy. So you stop. And because of cortisol, I'm probably not as smart now for 18 minutes. So just stop. Then O, oxygenate. Take a deep breath down into your toes. Everyone right now, literally, just take a mindful breath right down into your toes. We know from magnetic resonance imaging, functional MRI, that your left prefrontal cortex will calm your amygdala when you take a mindful breath. Then we go to the SO, final S is seek information. We jump to judgment based on less than 5% of available information. And so SOS is a way to kind of pattern interrupt so we can get more than 5% to realize, oh, there's nothing to worry about. Or, yeah, there is, and we've got to do something. So that's a great question, Brittany. Thank you.
All right, who else do we have? You can also just raise your hands and we will promote you to panelists so we can see your video. Maya, how about you? All right, rejoining as panelist. Perhaps. All right, we'll move on to Kat. Looks like they're rejoining as panelists, and we'll be able to see them in a moment. And anybody else, just a reminder, you can raise your hand and we will promote you as well. Hi, Kat.
Hi, how are you?
Is one of our moderators.
I don't really have a question. I'm still sort of processing everything, but I do appreciate the sort of quantification around the 18 minutes or because it's something that it's clearer to me to give yourself the time frame as opposed to just, I've always known that it takes me a longer time to process things, but to just have that to like have the first reaction, I think is very helpful to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what's neat is that the more you practice this, the reason that we actually have mindfulness as part of that last 8% morning routine is because it's like a muscle. It's like you go to the gym to build up muscle. You go to the mindfulness to build up literally the left prefrontal cortex, calming of the amygdala, and to be more in your body. It's an irony that in this day and age, we spend so much time looking at ourselves, but not actually being in our body. The more we're in our body, the quicker we notice, okay, I'm starting to hijack. I'm starting to drop markers. I can feel it. Now, what can I do? And just even to know, I'm not going to be as smart right now. I'll give you a really quick story. So I work, one of the consulting clients is one of the bigger pension funds in the world, or the US anyway. So I'm working with their CEO, and he's in front of his board. They're talking about a multi-billion-dollar acquisition decision. And there's a faction in the board that, is kind of a bit against him. You know how these things work. And so he's pitching the idea. Their senior team's behind it. He's pitching 2 days, 5 p.m. day one. And it's not going anywhere. In fact, it's starting to get heated. We've all kind of been there, right? And he sent me a note that night and he said, JP, I wasn't dropping markers. I was throwing markers at them. And that, just illustrates how he was feeling. And what was brilliant, to be honest, is that he stopped himself and he said, hey, everyone, I'm down markers. I think we need to take an 18-minute break. He literally used those words. And everyone's like, what are you talking about, right? And, and he said, he described it in 2 or 3 minutes. And 2 people, one on the faction said, I think we're down markers. So they said, well, let's take an 18-minute break. They did. They came back. It's like 6 p.m. And they said, this is day 1 of our retreat. let's just go have some drinks, relax, talk about it, come back tomorrow. Now, here's the thing. Do we think the probability went up that they made a better decision because they managed with the brain and mind? They managed this last 8% conversation and decision. Absolutely, right? There's a great Japanese proverb that says, all of us are smarter than any one of us. And so I just think this is it, right? And if we can teach this and have our teams understand this, all of a sudden we don't take it so personally, right? You're not mad at me, you're just kind of mad, and okay, let's deal with it. Sometimes when we're on Zoom with our team, we say, let's take an 18-minute break, and we go away. And what's interesting is we come back on earlier than 18 minutes, but we've had that pattern interrupt, right? And we don't feel bad that, sometimes we get hijacked, and that's okay. And so it's this whole aggressive learning. So when I work with teams, this is some of the stuff that we do that I get so excited, because nobody wants to make a mess. Nobody wants to avoid. We don't feel good. I mean, all of us. The reason we wake up at 3 a.m, it's not because we have too much to do. It's because the uncertainty, fear, and because we feel like, oh, I'm not having that conversation. I should be having that conversation. Why am I not? What's going on? Like, that's what gets us more than anything. And so I just don't want us to waste moments, almost more than anything. We don't want to leave an Olympics or this life not taking our shots.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, it definitely seems easier to take that time and then have the conversation than to redo the conversation or try and refix it or like think about it later.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we all know when we do make that mess, oh my gosh, it takes how long to kind of, we have to I'm okay for apologizing, but we apologize and we do all this, and it's 2 weeks, not, maybe longer, but at least 2 weeks where there's really a residue in that relationship that we have to work through. So why not, like you say, just say, and by the way, yesterday I dropped a podcast called How to Stop People from Treating You Poorly, because we're getting a lot of feedback right now from our podcast audience that because we're all in these confined situations, we're just rubbing up against each other. And so it's a really easy 3-point plan that just helps you in that moment just say, I can't continue in the conversation. There's a few more things, of course, but it's just a great way so that we don't sit there and end up, throwing markers and having impact we don't really intend. Because, we're all suffering right now, right? We do need to be a bit more kind to everyone, including ourselves, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Kat. Really appreciate the comment.
Sure.
We have a related question, actually. This is from Maya, who's also a moderator on our team. And she asks, how do you know when you have missed the 8% conversation?
Oh, Maya, that's a great question. It sounds like I laugh only because I'll tell you, it's so easy. And I've almost alluded to it, because I wake up at 3 a.m. and I kind of know that I'm not speaking my truth. Or the next time I see them, there's a residue between us. It's not free and clear with that person. There's something else. There's a tension. That's the second sign. So it's either I wake up. By the way, here's the thing. It might be different for you, Maya, or for anyone else. So the key, that's why we need to be aggressive learners. But I can tell you, patterns, we wake up at night, this is what we ruminate about, or we're now in their presence and we feel a tension. Those are two that we know in terms of patterns with others, but there might be others. So, that's where you want to do your work. Thank you for that question.
We've got another, Tommy Doyle. He is the Senior VP of Corporate Development at EBSCO. And it was funny, actually, you had the Warren Buffett quote up, and I interestingly met Tommy he came to one of our workshops last year at the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting.
Oh, very neat.
Really. Hi, Tommy.
Hi, Brittany. Nice to see everyone again. JP, thanks. I came in a little bit late, but this.
You missed the best part of it, Tommy.
I'm going to watch your thing, but this is really relevant to me. This is really, really relevant and helpful. So thank you for sharing, and I'm signed up and everything. So I'm definitely in a emotionally hijacked state. My family's back across the ponds. We've had deaths. I can't get back, and I'm facing battles at work. There's two questions I had, and I think you started to touch on one of them, the other one, or both of them, but I just wanted to ask them more specifically. So one is that get the power of routine. One of the things I'm finding really right now is my sleep patterns are all off. So
Yes.
I'm up at different times in the night. It's not like a consistent 2 or consistent 3. I mean, yesterday it was 1, the day before it was 4. So is that a good time just to, rather than wait till like 7 a.m. or 6:45 or 5:30, whatever you want to set, can you just do it then?
Yeah. That's so I've got a couple of thoughts. In fact, you know what, this is giving me an idea around maybe one of my next idea of the days is how to manage sleep. Because with athletes at Olympic Games, this is a real issue because there's so much anxiety that they're playing the game before. You know, we always say play the game on the Saturday, not on Monday to Friday, if you follow, right? By the way, I'm a big rugby fan. I'm a big All Black fan. And I'm upset that
Nice.
England beat our All Blacks in the World Cup, but I'll try
me
to
too,
not.
Me too.
I'll try not to get too upset about that. But the point is that, like, we got to manage. So we need to manage our thinking so that we can sleep. So there's a bunch of things we need to do. And by the way, when we are sleep deprived, we are not at our best. You know that. So
Yeah.
I would say don't initially go. Maybe what I'm going to do though is I'm going to put into the podcast like a 15-minute podcast where you don't get up, but you just listen to it as a way to kind of get you back to sleep, because that's very helpful. But you actually, if you're going to try and get back to sleep, don't get up, move, and do the full thing. But if it's like, no, I'm definitely not sleeping, absolutely, this is, get up and do the 15-minute. In fact, what we're finding is that people are enjoying it so much, they're going for longer than 15. And 15 was a kind of that minimum that says, hey, this is a way to start the day, but you can go a little bit longer. And in fact, some podcast, as you explore the podcast, you'll see some are very instructional ideas of the day. Some are longer, like 15-minute body scans. So you can do kind of one, then add on the other, if that's what you want to do. So just make the choice around, do I need to still try to sleep? If so, that's a different strategy than, no, I'm up. And absolutely, that's a good time then to use that. Here's the other thing. We work with NASA as well, and there's something you might be familiar with. It's called the NASA nap. And it's something I use a lot of. And so, and by the way, I got to put this into one of the podcasts as an idea that, Tommy, I got to reference you for all of these. This is good for my creativity. But the thing is, we know that if you take a nap for 25 minutes, you get a 34% increase in cognitive functioning. Here's the best time to take the nap. If you sleep from, let's say, midnight to 6 a.m., right? So in that 6-hour stretch, let's just for argument's sake, that's when we sleep. Take that midpoint, 3 a.m., add 12 hours, 3 p.m. That's when, according to the research, it's the best time to take your nap. And that'll help you continue through the day, Tommy, because you are, I could tell, I mean, all of us are, but boy, when you've got loved ones away and, you know, it's so hard, we're on video, we can't be there. It's really, it's no wonder that you're feeling it. And so I would say really work on, and you are already, I can tell, but on yourself, like getting as much of your sleep, you know, doing that nap, using the morning routine as a way to kind of really get focused and think, okay, what can I control? What can I not control? So I think you're on it, but that would be my suggestion, Tommy.
Thank you, JP. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure. Appreciate the question. And you know what, by the way, I don't like to wish people good luck because I don't really believe in luck. I mean, we could get into a conversation about that, but I believe really in two more things, not good luck, but good preparation and then good courage. So the fact that you're on this, that all of us are on this, right? Good preparation, let's prepare. That's why we do the morning routine. But then when we're in that moment, that last 8% moment when we need to step up, make a tough decision or, you know, really tune into somebody, we can be courageous to do the right thing. So I don't want to wish you good luck. I want to wish you good preparation and good courage, Tommy, and everyone, of course.
Oh, bless you, JP. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Tommy. So we've got a few minutes left. I'll offer one last chance for anybody else to raise their hands to ask a question. And in the meantime, JP, thank you so much for sharing this with us today. I think we all really needed it, and appreciate you taking the time out of your day to meet with our community.
Oh, well, I'll say this. This is a really difficult time. Like, it is. And if you're suffering and challenged, one of the best things that we can do for ourselves is to bring tenderness and compassion for ourselves. In one of the podcasts, when you go there, you'll see a tool called ETA. And the T stands for tenderness. And literally, we do this with Navy SEALs because we can be our harshest critic. We're not doing enough. We should be doing better. This is a hard time. If we can bring compassion and tenderness for ourselves, it actually helps us reset so we can start again and be at our best. So thank you, Brittany and Charlie and everyone. I mean, I could talk on and on, as everyone could probably tell. But do join, the podcast, take the course. If you link in with me, I'll send you a code so you can take that course. And again, it is filling up, but we'll try and get you in there. But more than anything, just stay at it, right? Stay at it. That's, preparation and courage.
And tenderness for yourself.
I
Which
like
this
that.
community is, we've got a whole group of type A people. So
Yeah,
it can be a little tricky for some,
absolutely.
including myself.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much, Brittany. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And a final note, we will be sending that follow-up email that'll have all of the tools that JP referenced throughout the talk, as well as the recording if you'd like to share it with your team. And I think, we do have a reminder for next week. We do have 2 sessions coming up, one on product management and COVID-19, on product preparedness, and the other is with a well-renowned sommelier. Anthony will be leading us through one of those brain breaks we've been talking a whole lot about. So if you are into wine and want to join us, it'll be a virtual wine tasting. We'll tell you how to prepare for it, but you can reach out to me or Charlie if you'd like to join for either of those. And with that, I think we'll close. One final check for any other questions. No hands raised, so that's it. Thanks, JP.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.